Good morning, guys, and welcome to the podcast. I've got a fantastic guest for you coming out of South Carolina, Michael Bank, and he is the owner at Capital Karate. He's very active in the martial arts world, business owner, and connected through mutual connections through the Tony Robbins group. And he just sold his business, and he was able to retire before the age of 40. And he's going to talk to us all about designing a business so that it's sellable, and a lot of principles around financial independence, financial freedom will apply. So I'm really happy to have him. So Michael, welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chris. Very excited to be here today.
Yeah, briefly talk about your journey. You built Capital Karate and you sold it, and then I'm excited to ask you tons of questions.
All right, sounds good. All right. I guess we'll go back to my early professional career. Straight out of high school, joined the National Guard in the military, Air Force National Guard and Security Forces. And that was right for September 11th, so my 1 week and 2 weeks a year turned into about 4 of my 6 years working full-time active duty. But during that time, I became the base hand-to-hand combat instructor. And when I was deployed overseas, I ran all the hand-to-hand combat for that base. Got attached to a special forces unit called the Ravens, working flying in and out of Iraq, being an expert in plane security. And after 6 years of doing that, I was very good at my job. I had a lot of civilian offers to do private security. I had offers with the NSA, NCIS, a lot of local law enforcement and civilian contractors. But my love was martial arts. I've been in martial arts since I was 10 years old. I've competed around the nation at that point. And I decided, hey, I always wanted to teach martial arts. So I decided that I would go ahead and give it a try. While I was in the service, I did manage to get a bachelor's in business from the University of South Carolina, emphasis in human resource management and entrepreneurship, which did not help one bit for knowing how to run a business. But I also then got a minor in coaching physical education, which that information did come in handy with learn to teach, and then picked up an associate's degree in criminal justice through the Air Force, which really helped me to teach my students how to become, how to be smart with what they do in self-defense and how police officers work and what they need to understand if there's ever interactions and you have to deal with the police. My hodgepodge of skills all came together to be a martial arts school. Like any type of artist you'd ever imagine, at first I thought I knew everything, and I very quickly found out I didn't know a darn thing about business. I grew a little bit every year my first couple of years, but it took about 3.5 years until I decided to get serious in business. Started hiring business coaches. I got very involved in the Tony Robbins world at that point in time. I used a Tony Robbins business coach and done a bunch of their programs. And I found consultants within the industry who really helped me to just grow and explode the business.
That's a really great segue, and we'll dive into the question in A. And then one thing that is for business owner distinguish, like, what is the problem with most businesses today? Like, why do they struggle? Why can't they grow and scale? Why can't they ultimately make a business sellable? What's going on?
I've always loved the concept of that Robert Kiyosaki teaches with the 4 quadrant systems within business, that you have on the top left, you've got the employee quadrant. On the bottom left, you've got the small business owner. On the top right, you have the big business. And on the bottom right, you have the investor quadrants. And so many people stay in that small business quadrant. They define that small business quadrant as if you leave your business for 2 weeks, it shrinks or it doesn't make money those 2 weeks. And then you have to come back and try and make up. And very few businesses really think about switching over to that big corporation quadrant, where that business is not based around you. Your personality is not a factor in the business, and the business should still be able to continue to grow and thrive with or without you.
Yeah, I really love that. And, accordingly, so people get stuck in that solo quadrant. So basically they quit their job and basically they buy themselves another job. Ultimately, they're in control, but it's also their time as well. So if people are like, for example, we have a lot of doctors and dentists on the show listening, and, a lot of them are in this kind of S quadrant. How do they get to this kind of B quadrant? Like, what is the shifts do they need to start making to get into this B quadrant?
All right. Very excellent question. I actually, funny enough, taught a seminar for a group of chiropractors talking about this exact concept not long ago. It was actually upper cervical specialists, so some very specialized guys. We become a product of our results in life, and we live in a crazy world. anything can happen. And I always live working with, especially a lot of children and stuff. I always look at what's the what if, what bad can happen. What happens if that business is based around you and you get in a car accident? What happens if that business is based around you and you get injured? You have to deal with an illness, anything like that. If you start thinking about how can this business survive, start off with 1 day a week without me, and then being able to build it up more and more, then you're going to realize that you have to have these systems to run the business. So I was building out that concept for years, and I ended up being thrown into that sad situation of my wife got diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer. And I went from, although I was pulling away from the business, I was still managing a lot. I was still in there every day, to the fact that I might not see my staff but once a week. We were doing clinical trials. She had to do chemo, radiation, all that kind of stuff, where we had to go out of town. We were going specialists up at Duke. And I realized that, hey, we had to design everything that it's going to run the exact way that I want it to run without me being there. So it just made me take every system we had and make it so detailed that it couldn't be messed up, but so simple within those details that anyone could do it. And there was not going to be a variation depending on which staff member was working with the parent, teaching the classes, that there would be a feeling of unity throughout the business. So, my challenge that I implore any kind of small business owner is, step one, get to the point where you can be away 1 day a week. Doesn't have to be the same day. It's not that you have to take every Monday off. Maybe take first Monday off, second Tuesday off, third Wednesday off, things like that. But figure out ways that the business is not completely wrapped around you.
Really insightful. And so elaborating more, when you say systems, like what kind of give examples and like what categories that you can build systems around?
All right. So yeah, there was about 70 or 80 systems that, we had to manage. So that's, as a business owner, your job is to figure out what systems there are and manage them. There's everything from the lead generation, but what kind of external marketing you're doing, what kind of internal marketing that you're doing, and make sure that's going to continue to happen without you having to be the key person to deal with every single aspect of it, to when you get the lead or you get the incoming call, exactly how it's going to be nurtured. So we set up massive amounts of automations, so that way it would catch anyone that fell through the cracks, as well as training your staff of the importance of a lead, the importance of getting back to that lead within 5 minutes, if possible. The stats go way, way down if it takes more than 5 minutes to get back to any kind of lead. The number of follow-ups, at the average, if you look at it, a lead that's followed up 7 times actually has a very high closing percentage. So making sure that your staff doesn't think that they're smarter than you and saying that, oh, we tried, they didn't call back, but make sure that they stay on it and they understand the true importance and value of the cost of the lead. I remember back 10 years ago when we were getting leads for $3-4 a piece, and my staff just didn't even understand how beautiful that was when we used to have to manually do everything. And now lead costs are starting to go significantly up. So you have to make sure that any staff member, any team member you have understands that this is the lifeblood of your business. This is how you get paid, is by us being able to get these people in. So then there's the phone procedures, automated flows, sending video text messages, pre-qualifying them before they come in a little bit, showing them what to expect when they come in, giving them an incredible wow experience, making them feel comfortable and that it was the right decision. Then the follow-up procedure to get them to ultimately become a client, and then later on build up the rapport to go to a higher level of coaching and training and going into a much longer level commitment. So that way you have a customer that's going to stay with you for many years versus just a few months. So then on the back end of that, there's retention systems, follow-up calls. We had 2 4-6 week systems that when somebody was with us, there was calls that we'd make at the 2-week mark, 4-week mark, and 6-week mark. One of the best explanations that really resonated with me in this concept was that there's massive studies about how in kindergarten, students who have a good experience in kindergarten tend to perform better academically through their entire career. So we think of our new clients as kindergartners, that we really have to take the time, hold their hand, get them indoctrinated into our system, our way of doing things, and seeing the value to be able to stay with us for a long term. There's, of course, everything from then on the back end, getting CRM. For martial arts, it was class plans. For any other business, it's just how the business is run. Make sure that there's standards, make sure there's benchmarks, make sure that there's ways to constantly check in on those standards, whether it be you personally or someone else checking in on every single benchmark within the business. That way that nobody's being dropped through the cracks, which is so easy as a business grows.
Yeah, there's so many, there's accounting, there's in what you described. So it's as a business owner, you have to start thinking about how you can either pay people or implement software to buy back your time so that you can focus on the important things. The other question I have for you is because you recently sold your business, and a lot of business owners that I talk to, they rely on employees. But in this day and age with software, because I was having lunch with one of my colleagues and he was describing this process where he was trying to basically lean up his company, and he was telling me he's relying more on software and he's in artificial intelligence as opposed to people. And so what are your thoughts? Because I know I'm pretty sure you used a lot of people for your systems, but people can fail and they quit and other things, whereas software, it's not without its problems, but software and automation and robotics is a little bit more dependable.
Actually, funny enough, it was a saying from our mutual friend that put us connected together. He once told me something that stuck with me, that you can't automate giving a damn. So you do have to still have the personal touches, but I'm a big believer in using automations and software to help fill in the cracks. So for us, most of our students came to us 2 to 3 times a week. So we did, and we had the attendance system within our software. So we had an automatic text that would go out to any families that had not shown up in 8 days, just saying, hey, we missed you last week. When are we going to see you next in class? But we would, of course, within that software, we would also get a notification to then follow up with them 3 days later if we did not hear back from them or see them. And then, then everything else is just building a pattern that people can expect. For the martial arts is a very personality-based business, but there's a lot of things that can be expected at different points, as they moved into different classes. There'd be different level of curriculum. So we have uploaded curriculum that would help to augment any classes that they would meet. We like to have check-ins with every single family a couple times a year, just to sit down, talk with them, and encourage them to tell us what's going on in their lives, and that allowed us to catch issues ahead of time. And then we had a pretty cool one where every, I think, 17th class is something very random number, they would automatically be emailed a survey just saying, how was last night's class? And it was 1 to 5 stars, and it gave them a chance to give feedback, and they could either choose for it to be, they could either be anonymous or they could put their information out there. And then after that, if they did give 5 stars and gave great feedback, it would automatically redirect them to giving us a Google review, Facebook review, things like that. But if it was anything besides 5 stars, it would immediately send us an email letting us know what's going on. So that way we knew that, hey, something is making this family not happy. And you tend to see trends on stuff, and people go from very happy to start going down. And you do a couple private lessons, you work with the family, you find out what's going on, you start seeing go up. You can start seeing the trends over time when people are willing to give feedback.
Really interesting. And so you described this process and systems, and I like how you used it to fill in the gaps. In every industry and every company and business is different. The other question I have for you is, because I've studied a lot of I've really made it a passion to really just be curious and study the uber successful, the kind of like the Michael. I'm fascinated with why Michael Jordan or Kobe or like Bill Gates or Steve Jobs are where they are at. And one of the thing is, for example, I look at like pro athletes or Olympic athletes. They're the best in the world at what they do. So bring home all these accolades. And then when they transition to a coaching role, they can struggle. And sometimes I've seen like some of the best coaches are like, they're not the best athletes, but they're coaching. And so also with business owners such as yourself, and you have a martial arts background. And so talk about this difference, dichotomy between the actual skill and the craft and the skill of being an entrepreneur and business owner, because people think, oh, you're an Olympic athlete or a professional athlete, you're going to have a successful business. But a lot of them struggle if they don't develop these skills. So talk about that.
So I'll talk specifically within martial arts, but I've seen it within a lot of other industries as well. So a lot of my best students, a lot of the guys who won multiple world titles, traveled around the world, competed, made horrible instructors. These tended to be the people who were the very naturally gifted people, and they never really had to learn how to break it down. I had students who I'd have a technique that took me a year to get down well, and they could get it down well in class. Most businesses try to take either those people and put them in charge, and they can't understand why people don't understand things. The other end of the extreme that we see in martial arts, and I'm sure it's everywhere else, is you take that person that's just been with you forever, that person that came in that was very socially awkward, that couldn't look people in the eye, and you got them to the point where they were halfway decent, that then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm going to put this guy in charge, when they're still socially awkward. It's not their nature. So I had an incredible aha moment many years ago when I had to fire an instructor for losing his temper in a sparring class. And I'm tossing and turning. It's 2 a.m. And I was like, what am I going to do? This was my main guy for running so many programs. I had some trips coming up that I really didn't want to cancel. So I got up, went to my office, pulled out pen and paper, went through my Facebook feed, went through my phone, and wrote down the names of every single person I could think of that could teach one karate class. That's all. If I could just get someone that I could teach to just cover one class. And what I realized was I wrote down a lot of people that were not martial artists. I wrote down people who were school teachers, people who were dancers, people who were gymnasts, but people who just understood how the human body worked. And I also noticed that the trend of those people that I wrote down was there were people who were good with children or good working with adults. And made me start realizing that, hey, I had to figure out a way to prioritize what's the most important. So I came up with a 3-tier strategy. Number one thing I'll look for is attitude. Number 2 thing I look for is conditioning, being in good shape. Then the number 3 thing I look for is their actual technique. So I look at that as the way I build my students as well as the way I build my staff. If I have someone that comes to me with a great attitude and is in good shape, I can teach them martial arts. I'm a martial arts instructor. I can teach them everything they need to know to be able to get out and teach classes and be successful. No problem, no stress whatsoever. But when I look at any other combination, if I look at someone with great conditioning, great technique, but a bad attitude, they're going to cost me clients. When I get someone with a great attitude and great technique, but they don't have the condition, they can't teach the 8 classes a day that we're teaching, then they're going to be constantly calling in sick. They're going to be letting me down. So as I looked at that, for anyone who I'm building up, attitude first. I hire 100% based on attitude. And then once you get that, the conditioning falls in place, the technique comes naturally. So if anyone who's looking for anyone for staff, look at their attitude. How are your customers going to perceive those people? And if they have that, the heavy lifting's already done.
Yeah, really. It's just this, and I've also seen it in especially the pro tennis players, the ones that win Wimbledon and they become coaches, and it's a different skill. Coaching is a different skill. Business owner, entrepreneur, these are, you can be the best artist at your craft, but you have to be able to break it down. And like I say, it's just a skill-based skill set. The next question I have is, because congratulations, you sold your business and you were able to retire before the age of 40, which is how do you talk about the process that you get your business to be sale ready, and how do you go about?
All right. I appreciate that. Getting to the fun subjects. We utilized COVID as the great reset. Like I'm sure just about everyone that is on here, COVID caused significant changes. I had grown a monster of a business. We were open 6 days a week. We were teaching over 500 students a week. I had 5 full-time staff members, 4 part-time staff members. And after we shut down during COVID, my wife and I, my wife is in the business as well, we started deciding, hey, if we had to run this business with us stepping back into it, running it full time, how would we want it to look? And if we were to ever want to sell it, what would make it attractive to sell? Most people don't want to buy a business where they're working 6 days a week, where they're constantly struggling. So we really broke everything down, reevaluated it to make the business something that we would want to run if we had to run it, or that somebody would be very interested in taking over and running to actually have quality of life. So I actually had somebody who was supposed to be buying a school from someone else, and that sale fell through. And he came to me for an opportunity shortly after we reopened from COVID, and I was a lot smaller staff. And I knew that he was somebody who had the desire to own a business. So we took our school from being open 6 days a week down to being open 4 days a week. We set up our business model that we completely closed 4 weeks a year. So that way people could have vacations. So we completely closed the week of July 4th, the week of Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's. As we figured that those are the weeks that staff members would want off and the owner would want off. Doing these things also gets a lot better staff members coming to you as well. When I'm hiring an employee and I tell them, hey, you get 6 weeks of paid vacation, 4 weeks I choose, 2 weeks you choose, their mind is blown on that. Then the fact that we take care of people like crazy. I paid for half of everyone's health insurance. We had a retirement fund set up for our employees, had flexibility. We worked with them. I learned that staff always has 3 things that they care about. They care about their pay, they care about their schedule, and everyone has something personal to them that affects them, that they may want to be able to pick their kid up from school some days. They may want to be able to be a soccer coach. They have something that's going to be important to them. So as you find those things, you can get these clients that are going to be very loyal to you. Then next up for finding someone to buy it, ideally, especially in something like a martial arts school, the best person is going to be someone that the families are already familiar with and make it not a shock to them. Every school that I've seen sold to just someone completely outright, about a third of the students love the new guy, a third of them can't stand the new person and quit, a third of them are indifferent to it. But so what we did as my instructor was getting interested in buying school and we started having serious conversations about it, was we actually came up with a 9-month plan for him to take the school over. Over that 9-month period, every single month he took over a little bit more responsibilities. We got all the parents trained to go to him with every question. And we phased ourselves out over that 9-month period. So when we made the big announcement on the last 2 days we were open last year, that no one was really that shocked because they had seen us stepping away. But when they came in the first next year, nothing was different. People tend to think, oh, we take over this, we want to come in and we want to change all these things immediately. Fortunately, because I have a good relationship with this employee, I've known him for 20 years. He's worked for me multiple times over the years. We talked and said, hey, don't change anything until you understand it. And I still check in with him every couple of days. I still go by the school because I still own the building as well. So I have vested interest in his success. But think about, for anyone who is wanting to sell their business, think about the type of person that's going to want to buy the business and things that they're going to want. The highest income is not the only factor. Think about the type of those of us that became entrepreneurs. The joke is that you work 16 hours a day to not work 8 hours a day for someone else. But the truth of the matter is that people who have that vision of entrepreneurship want to have the freedom to have a life, to be able to do a little bit of traveling, to make the money that they feel like they deserve, to be able to just get out and enjoy life. So create that vision for them. So whether it's a medical practice, even if it's just gets off a little early on Fridays, or if it's a dental practice being closed on Mondays, some way, or choosing what weeks of the year you want to close, making it into a phenomenal life for whoever's going to do it versus a life of grinding and hustle. And that being the culture, I believe that you need to do that for a season. But if that's your lifelong goal, you're going to have a miserable life.
I really loved how you described that process. And then, so talking about numbers, because I'm really interested. How do you come up with a valuation? Because I always hear the term multiple, and I hear the term EBITDA. And then, so for talk about the relationship between EBITDA, multiple, and how you get to a valuation.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, there's all the different calculations, but you're going to sell it for what somebody's willing to pay. But you have to be able to figure out how to get that value of it. Most people who are young and looking to buy business, unless you're selling to a savvy investor, don't even know what those terms mean. But so what I did with my instructor who wanted to buy the school was I didn't really focus on that level of stuff. But now I did get together with an SBA loan officer. I made sure that everything within the parameters of selling the business would fall within their parameters. In case he needed a loan, fortunately, he had access to private financing, so he did not need it. But it's all about how you can explain to the person, this is what your life's going to look like. So what I did with him was I pulled all the expenses of the school, pull up everything over several months, and show them all the numbers laid out of, hey, here's how everything is. Here's how much I take. Here's how much my wife takes out. Hey, if we take a loan out for this amount, here's how much you pay for this loan. But you take my salary out, you take my wife's salary out. Hey, look, you're doing the exact same thing that you've been doing, just a little. You now have the ownership role, but you're now making $100,000 more a year. When you can show them that, the number doesn't matter as much as far as the mathematical calculations. I tried to keep everything in the 2 to 3x range for everything. But for me, I knew what my I win number was. And that's something that I love talking to business owners about is in martial arts, we're all about goal setting. We're about going after our goals, but very few business owners have said, hey, this is my exit number. This is my fire number. If you're into the financial independent retire early movement, I knew exactly where that number was. And at the end of the day, the amount that I ended up asking for was probably a little bit less than I could have gotten, but it got me to my fire number where I knew I never had to work a day in my life again. And I could live the life that I wanted to live. And it gave him less to argue about. So as we put everything together, I wanted to make it that his accountant would have zero complaints. His lawyers would have zero complaints. I set up everything to be as win as possible because I want to see the school still around 20 years from now.
Yeah, really interesting. I like there's just so many different schools, but I know especially when people are valuing companies, they always look at these, but it's interesting. The same thing with real estate. It's like whatever people are willing to pay, but you also have to know like how much you're paying in property tax, how much cash flow is this property producing, and these numbers, and just like what are the comps, like what are similar things. Just wanted to pick your brain. If people wanted to find out more about you and connect with you and contact you, how would they do that?
Easiest way to get a hold of me is on Facebook. It's Michael Bank, Bank. That's the easiest way to get a hold of me. Otherwise, I'm easy to find on Google as well. But yeah, I'm always happy to help. I enjoy talking business. I actually help coach some doctors. I help coach some attorneys that are just friends of mine that I've been helping them with their business model, their finances, helping them, several of them with their early retirement plans, figuring out where their number is, their lifestyle, helping some of them get out of debt. Of course, with medical student loans, some of them have insane amounts. I actually helped my doctor negotiate a massive pay raise, changing companies a couple months ago because she just didn't know how to explain it in a way that an employer would understand versus she'd look at everything through the doctor's lens. It's always interesting to bring in someone with a fresh set of eyes, someone who's been an employer and employee and had businesses, sold businesses, hired employees, fired employees, dealt with employees wanting more money, dealt with everything. When you can give someone who can give a clear picture of that, hey, here's what's going to be important to the people you're talking to. Here's how to show them massive value for bringing you on. But it turned out to be something like a $50,000 or $60,000 pay raise that she got by changing companies after I helped coach her on how to have that conversation.
Yeah. And what's next for you? Because I know, sounds like you're a commercial real estate owner and you sold your business. And so what's next for you on the horizon?
Right now, I'm loving life. So my wife, first part of the year was making the wife happy. So we're going in almost a year of retirement. So my wife got really big into pottery during COVID. So we rebuilt our garage into probably the most gorgeous pottery studio you're ever going to see. Then I went to Brazil. I got to go down and do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu with a lot of the top masters in the world down there. Just got back from Italy. I've been doing just tons of home renovations. I've been traveling at least 1 week every single month. Another part of our decision to retire early was knowing that our parents were going to be needing more help. So we did move my mother into our house with us. And we're in conversations with my wife's mother about moving her closer. So that's our big stress right now, is figuring out her next steps as she's getting that point where very soon she's going to need massive amounts more help. So it's the family life was a big reason for me to want to do this and be able to help. My mom is 79. My mother-in-law turns 83 next week. My dad is 81. So just to be able to be there to support them, to help them through their next stage of life has become a big passion for us, as well as make sure we just have some fun, enjoy. I still stay plugged in the martial arts industry and network, and I still go train just in case I do decide to ever go back, do some coaching, do something else. But I want to get bored before I jump into something else. And so far, I'm not getting bored.
Yeah. It was interesting because I wanted to ask you because, for example, I retired 8 years ago and I did the same thing but I got really bored after 6 months. It's just when I really needed something to challenge me and I wanted to do more. And for you, and I find this quite frequently, as people that sell their company or they have a basically massive liquidity event, they're kind of, and then after a while, so what kind of techniques and strategies are you using to create more meaning and find more meaning in your life? Like how do you maintain your mojo once
I'm a big the wheel of life that Zig Ziglar made very famous. And I started looking at that and realized that I had a lot of injuries in my body that I wanted to take care of. So I've spent a lot of time going to specialty chiropractors. I got a PEMF system. I got a red light system. I got a sauna. Been coming up with ideas because I realized that my physical health was the level that I was least happy with. Although I'm a high level martial artist, I can do all kinds of crazy athletic stuff. I still was never where I felt. But I love the concept of the wheel of life and figure out, hey, what areas of your life do you want to get more involved in? For me, in this past year, I've gotten a lot more involved in my physical health side of things. I've gotten really involved in the spirituality side and really starting to research more within religion, get a lot more active within the community, and been going to a lot more courses, trying to study. I felt like that while I was running the business, a lot of my family relationships did suffer a little bit because my focus was always on the business. So I'm trying to be able to reach out, be a better family member to the rest of my family, see them. So I'm just trying to fill those other levels of the wheel of life. When you look at it, there's the wheel for your career. I can say, hey, that wheel, that slice of the wheel is full. My finance, that's full. Most people still focus on what they're the highest on. I can pretty much forget about those two for now. And I'm just going to focus on all the other areas of my life that I want to improve. And I'm a big believer in constant improvement. I want to look at every single day, every week, every month. I want to get a little bit stronger. I want to find a better connection spiritually. I want better connections with my family, being able to do things, reestablishing friendships better because I worked evenings for most of my life. I'm still getting used to the concept that I can meet someone for dinner at night because that's just for 17 years of running a business, I pretty much never could. So I'm filling up my buckets with those. And I made a decision that, hey, I'm happy with my finance number. And I've got enough other projects that I can make my job whatever I want. So my job right now is my physical health, undoing some old military injuries, strengthening myself, strengthening my relationships. And when I get bored with that, when I get this full, I'll figure out something else. For now, that keeps me busy.
Another follow-up question I have for you is, I know we have 4 minutes remaining in this idea, because what's interesting is you said this number that you said that you're comfortable at. Like, how do you arrive at that number? Because I know, like, for me, it's, I arrive at the number, but I'm like, yeah, I could have gone, if I continue, I can do more. And so how do you balance contentment with growth and wanting to do more?
For me, it's your goal. So I took it to the extreme. I actually went and I ran the numbers that if I keep running my business the way I did till I was 70, I looked at it and I'd be worth like 50, 60, $70 million. But I'm like, what the heck am I going to do with 50, 60, $70 million at 70 years old? You start figuring out your lifestyle of what do you want to live? Where do you want to live? What do you want to look like? What's it going to cost? Make sure you have some inflation built in there. There's a couple books that did really help me out. One's a little bit older book, 7 years to 7 figures by Michael Masterson. It's about 20 years old. So a couple of the examples are outdated, but it's got one area that I've never seen another book where it talks about what your life would look like living off of a nest egg of $1 million, $2.5 million, 5.5, and $9.5 million, and understanding just, hey, what's this life going to look like? And then Die with Zero was also very instrumental in me of understanding that, hey, if you die with too much money left, you work too long. I'm a workaholic. I am a single focused person. I do not multitask well to save my life. So I realized that if I was still operating the business, it just took up so much mental space for me. But I looked at, hey, for me, travel's my passion. I want to travel on average 1 week a month, probably 2 or 3 big international trips every year. My house is paid off. My commercial real estate, which is now being leased by the person who bought the business from me, that's paid off in a couple of years too. So I looked at, hey, I've got a big pay raise when that gets paid off. And then I just looked at with no house payment, no commercial building payment. What do I want to do? Here's how much I want to spend on travel. And that is by far the biggest level. I'm not a fancy car guy. I still drive my 8-year-old Nissan Pathfinder. I'm going to drive it till the wheels fall off. Then I'll get something nicer. I took stock of what's important to me, and it's my health, it's travel, it's connections. And for me, there's not much expensive stuff that I'm really that into except for bourbon. I have gotten a lot more expensive on my taste there, but
yeah, it's so interesting because I love hearing these stories, because basically you're at this point where it's just like you have freedom, you have choice. It's, do you want to make $100 million? Do you need that? Some people just, once you arrive at a number, it's just the number is the score, but it's not, it's just what you want to do. And yeah, I resonate. I operate my life as a very lean startup. I eliminate any waste and I keep it very efficient. And I would joke with my friends, I was driving a '04 Camry that I had in med school, even now, but I just kept breaking down. So I'm like, I got to get a new car. And then just interesting. And I really enjoyed this conversation, and congratulations, and keep up the great work.
All right. I appreciate it. And yeah. And always, if you like the toys, you can lease them. So yeah, when I get bored, I'll lease something expensive, enjoy it for a week or two, but then go back. But I realize, hey, this just doesn't make me as happy as a trip to Italy or whatever. So I'd rather spend my money there.
Excellent. Yeah. And I'm really happy to Alex for bringing us together. And I really enjoyed this conversation.
All right. It's a pleasure to get a chance to finally meet you after chatting for a while. And we'll look forward to keeping in touch.